Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Thank you all for finding the time and attending today's webinar. Your cameras are off and microphone muted for the entirety of the session. Do not tamper with the functions of the platform for a smooth and uninterrupted session. Before we start, let me explain how you can talk to us during the webinar. If you have any questions during the presentation, just write them in the question and answer section. For comments, use chat box. Innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower, said Steve Jobs. Needless to say, the pandemic has transformed the centuries-old chalk talk teaching model to one driven by technology. We need to embrace technology to make learning and research more engaging. Taking this thought forward, I, Dr. Anjali Sherawat, Assistant Professor, Ansel University, welcome you to the webinar Changing Landscape in Research, organized by Knowledge Resource Center and IT Department of Ansel University. I welcome the webinar conveners, Dr. R.N. Malviya and Mr. Sandeep Bishnoi. Ansel University has been working towards awareness generation for knowledge management. The Changing Landscape in Smart Environment is a communicating title including a wide array of subjects and concerns within its scope of edification. The area is not only relevant for the library and information professionals, but has also not left any field of academics untouched. The information and technological skills are the crucial assets for the modern knowledge economy. Technological and cultural shifts are both needed and happening in research. As custodians of knowledge in the digital age, libraries, institutional repository, data centers, and information and knowledge centers have a pivotal role in driving organizational and societal innovations in global knowledge society. Before we begin, following are the few instructions to be followed. As I've mentioned earlier also, all the questions are invited in the question and answer box, which will be taken by the speakers at the end of the session. We will be running a live question and answer at the end of the webinar. So we have enabled our Ask a Question feature. It is at the bottom of your screen in the auditorium. So if you have any questions, just pop them in there. Institutional repository disseminates rich source of digitized materials, drafted and published by learned societies. In India, major research and development institutes and few academic institutes provide an institutional repository service to its clientele. This institutional repository technology offers the researchers to deposit their work, which facilitates the target audience to access the research publications via digital form. Dr. Mayank Trivedi is presently the university librarian and a Senate member at Shrimati Hansa Mehta Library, the Maharaja Sayaji Rao University of Baroda, Vadodara. As a university librarian of the MCU, Dr. Trivedi contributed immensely to its overall development. The HM Library was ranked among the top 20 libraries across India in FlipNet 2009 by FlipNet 2013 Information and Library Network Center. Shrimati Hansa Mehta Library was also ranked among the top 10 best libraries across the nation in India by Nielsen Survey 2016. He initiated the development of the Open Knowledge Gateway and Institutional Repository at MSc. He has been actively involved in leveraging e-learning content creation, open education resources, and online lectures such as Homekar E. He has been managing the Vadodara Center of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University, Ahmedabad for over 5 years. I welcome Dr. Mayank Trivedi to share his views on the topic, impact of institutional repository and core during current pandemic scenario.
Thank you.
Over to you, Dr. Trivedi.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Anjali. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Very good afternoon, friends. First of all, I would like to thank the Vice Chancellor of Ansel University, management of Ansel University, for giving me an opportunity to share my views. My heartfelt thanks to my friend Dr. Malviya ji and Dr. Shantanu. My thanks to Mr. Sandeep and Professor Anjali too for organizing this webinar on a wonderful topic, which is the need of the topic is changing landscape in research. Friends, when we talk about research, it always starts with the data. And I will tell you that 20th century is a data century. And you might have observed that how much money Mr. Mukesh Ambani is investing in Reliance Jio, and many international IT giants like Facebook, Microsoft are also going to invest in Reliance Jio. So when we start from the data, as a librarian, we know that generally data is being generated from the experiments, laboratories, surveys, and so on. And then a scientist or a researcher publish it. But prior to publication, where it is being stored? So the answer is institutional repository. Although we do not have a mandate in India to deposit public funded research in institutional repository. In many countries, this type of mandate is there. So as a librarian, we have to catch data first, and then research data management is also another important aspect. Over and above there is an acute need of aggregation of these institutional repositories too, because there are so many institutional repositories across the India, like all IITs and IISc Bangalore and so on. Do we wish that researchers should go to each and every institutional repository? So the need of the time is the aggregation of all these institutional repositories. In India, of course, NDLI, that is National Digital Library of India, has started harvesting metadata from institutional repositories. But due to the lacking of the mandate, it cannot reach up to 100%. And our presence at global level is not much encouraging also. So the core platform is created to connecting institutional repositories, and it is the largest aggregator of institutional repository. So I would like to show my presentation. Is it visible? Hello. So the topic is impact of institutional repository, and core is an aggregator of institutional repositories. During this current pandemic season. So when we talk about institutional repository, normally institutions are creating repositories by using open source software and making research and also accessible too. So what institutional repository is doing to manage and preserve the scholarly content. So repository can support research, learning, and administrative process also. This is a definition of institutional repository given by this AR. I have taken it from ARL website by monthly report. It states that it is a set of services of institutes that a university offers to the members of its community for the management and dissemination of digital materials created by the institute and its community members. Moving PPT. Yeah. So institutional repository is a collection of objects in a variety of formats, which includes various degrees of scholarly authority, process of scholarly inquiry, and typically motivated by a scholarly community. So it is a centralized and distributed activity, framework and infrastructure, permanence that can sustain changes, reverse-it, digital access, and we can preserve content in a longer term. Open source software We can give the ability to developers worldwide and make it accessible globally. So, between institutional repository and digital libraries. Institutional repositories are organized around a particular institutional community. Digital libraries are built around any number of organizing principles, is a topic or subject or discipline. IR faculties are contributing voluntarily, as we do not have a mandate to keep the research in open domain, public funded research in India. So it is a voluntary basis. And in digital libraries are the products of deliberate collection and development policy. Repositories only for offer a limited user services. We are having the examples DSpace at MIT and IR at MSU and so on. Digital libraries, we have the example of National Digital Library of India. So, this is the difference between the IR content and digital content. In institutional repository, the content is being deposited by the creator, owner, or the admin of the IR. And in repository architecture, manage the content and metadata. While putting in content in the repository, we can put, we can search, we can retrieve, and repository must be sustainable, trusted, well supported, and well managed. So which type of content we can deposit in institutional repositories? We can deposit preprints, postprints, research findings, working papers, technical reports, conference papers. These all things can be deposited by the faculty. We can deposit multimedia, material, learning material, objects, data sets, web-based presentations, journals, journal articles, technical reports, working papers, standards, theses, dissertation, reviews, components of graphs, figures, and statistical reports and surveys also. Students can deposit the thesis and dissertation, projects and portfolio, awarded research and performance and recitals. University can deposit annual reports, papers, curriculum, and course modules. Majority of the institutional repository are open access, and here are the few definitions. I have taken it from the JISC website. What is open access? The open access research literature is composed of free copies of peer-reviewed journals or journal articles, conference papers, as well as technical reports, theses, working papers, and no licensing restriction on their use by readers. They can therefore be used freely for research, teaching, and other purposes. What doesn't come under open access? It is not access. It is not a self-publishing nor a way to bypass a peer review process. People are having the myth that in open access, not following the peer review process, but it is not like that. Many platforms like Directory of Open Access Journals, they are also performing this peer review process. So it simply means to make research results freely available online for research community. We know that there are two options, gold and green open access publishing. Gold open access uses a funding model that does not charge readers or their institution for access. DLib magazines and Eridan is the examples. And green open access, author publish papers in one of the 25,000 or so referred journals in all disciplines and archive these papers in open access digital institutional repositories. We have a platform of open access initiative in India, and I have taken this screenshot. I'm also in the working group of this open access India movement. If we look at the open access movement started, it started, we have Budapest Open Access Initiative mandate, and it was started in Cornell University by starting this archives.org. So why IR is needed for university? It is a tangible indicator of research output of a university and in NAC accreditation also this is counted. Repository content is readily searchable both locally and globally, and it can be used as a marketing tool for the institution. It allows an institution to manage as intellectual property rights appropriately. An institutional repository benefits the institution, the researcher, and anyone interested in scholarly output. From an institutional perspective, it provides a record of scholarly activity taking place within the university. And for researcher, it creates a stable, reliable records of a researcher work. Say, for example, a faculty working at X university and he or she leaves the university and goes to another university. But if his or her work is being deposited in institutional repository, then it can be archived for a longer term also. So a repository has a unique international internet address. We can call it a handle. And finally, it increased access to scholarly knowledge is a benefit to all. So these are the of institutional repository, for scholarly communication, for storing learning materials and coursework, for managing collection of research documents, preserving digital material on a long-term basis, knowledge management, electronic publishing, research assessment exercise, and it is a very wonderful collaborative tool also. So these are some of the benefits. For researcher point of view, researcher can showcase your institute's output and his or her personal profile also. It can increase the citation for authors, 24-hour access through a web-enabled device, and life's work in one location, even if the faculty changes the places of his or her career. For librarians, it provides a new way for archiving and preserving valuable work, and cost effective, and has to identify. It reduces duplication of records also. For university point of view, it is an effective marketing tool. It increases the visibility, reputation, and prestige. Greater disciplinary research. We can enhance the funding also, and it facilitates gathering data such as publication for assessment. And for global community, free access of scholarly, and it increases the public knowledge also. So by depositing the material, we can increase the citation, impact, and usage, and faculty can increase the public research profile also, and preservation of research output from the institution point of view. For maintaining institutional repository, there are 2-3 steps. First of all, we need to make a policy, institutional policy, and a contribution guideline, and we need to build the infrastructure also, and institutional support and mandate must be there. Normally, are using open source software to create institutional repository, and usually they follow OAI PMH protocol, Intel Server or Linux, Red Hat, MySQL, Postgres, BMS, Apache. These all are the open source software. And the core issue for starting repository are policy decision, organizational issues, and cultural issues also, which means which type of content we can deposit, it should be decided. And issue also we observe deposit type, metadata, specialized staff. So these are the issue we need to take care of. In policy decision, we need to define the scope, necessary, and types of documents also. Single database, different types of single one. Software we can use or ePrint or GNU or any other open source software. And research types, theses, journals, print reports, it can be decided at institutional level. So the organizational issues, we need to define the metadata quality, and digitization, that is born digital content, or we can put by scanning the document also. We Define the file format, whether the all types of file format can be acceptable or not, or full text database or bibliographic database. Copyright, we can take the help of Romeo Publishers copyright policy. And depositors declaration, non-exclusive license, copyright patents, and so on. So in cultural issues, we need to check the sensitivity of organizational culture and background, community size, strategy, stakeholders, copyright, and of library and institutional website also. So these four open source software can be used to create the institutional repository. DSpace is designed by MIT, Fedora developed by Cornell University, ePrint developed at the University of Southampton. So these are the four open source software normally institutes are using. So and discipline based repositories are also there. These are the few examples like PubMed Central for medical and health science. It is designed and developed by US National Library of Medicine. And then research paper in economics, REPAC, archive for physics. So these are the subject and discipline based repositories. This screenshot I have taken for archives and REPAC. So this is the screenshot of IR at MSU, and we have used DSpace software, and we have customized as per the need of our university, that is the faculty, all the faculties we have tried to cover. And if we talk about the lockdown period, I have taken this slide, usage of institutional repository during COVID. Total search is more than 1,740. So OpenDOR is the platform on which you register your institutional repository, and OpenDOR staff harvest and assign metadata and ensure a high degree of quality and consistency in the information provided. It is maintained by Sherpa Consortium. Okay. This is the screenshot, and you can also take the guideline from this site. This is the screenshot I have taken, and IR is also registered at OpenDOR platform. This is the screenshot about the IR at MSU. And they are maintaining and they are checking the consistency of the institutional repository also. Good sign. So I would like to share that we are contributing to National Digital Library of India also. Our IR is contributing to NDLI also. They can give you the statistic proportion by country. The statistics of OpenDOR country wise and language wise and subject wise also. Multidisciplinary, you can see the maximum number of IRs are there, and then health science, medicine. This is another form, registry of open access repository. It aims to monitor overall growth in the number of ePrint archives available at UK Southampton University. But they the data automatically via IPMH. Also, ROIR materials archiving policy and 181 institutional repositories, including MS University Baroda, InflibNet, Bharatdasan University, and so on. So this is the I have taken of ROIR, and you can see MS Baroda is there. Also, IR of InflibNet is also there. Roadmap will give you statistics of the all institutional repositories across the world. You can see MS University over there. It can give you the open access policy adopted by the countries. You can see top 10 countries, USA, UK, other countries are there, but as we do not have a mandatory open access policy, India is not there. This is another ranking of web repositories, Webometrics, giving ranking. And You can see MS University IR is also there in the ranking of web universities. Webomics gives the world ranking, and the world ranking of MSU is 2382. If we look at Indian scenario, nearly 94 institutional repositories are there. Among these 94, 54 are using DSpace, 21 are using ePrints, using Greenstone, and leading institutional repositories, all IITs, IISc Bangalore, National Laboratory, and so on. So these are the statistics repositories by country. You can see India 94, and content languages also can be derived from this platform. Software platform, maximum institutional repositories are 40, more than 40% are using DSpace, and the content point of view, majority are the journal articles. Overview and the growth of institutional repository, you can see tremendous growth is there. So why digital preservation? To preserve natural and cultural heritage is the need of the time. We need to promote academic research also, and nowadays we are getting born digital content only. So to preserve born digital content, institutional repository is the good platform, and it enables us to public access to legacy collection and significant increase in the volume of the research. So it is very difficult to manage the volume of the research also, and the need of the archival and access of unpublished information. And so by depositing the content in IR, we can get the access 24/7 also, and handle the preservation. This is also can be solved by depositing the content in institutional repository. And as I've told you, to manage the e-only content, and then research data management is the another important aspect. So the maintenance of digital over the long term with a view to ensuring its continued accessibility, digital preservation is highly desired, and we need to store it correctly, maintain adequately in online world. Time scale of decades or even centuries also. So as we learn about the primary, secondary, and tertiary resources, these are the primary sources of information, standards, technical reports. All these things can be deposited in institutional repositories, and secondary resources, source of information. There are scientific data sets also can be deposited, and library catalog data sets, citation database, and so on. These are the tertiary types of source of information: electronic books, online books, print on ebooks on web, dictionaries, encyclopedias, maps, and so on. So now this is the platform core. Core is being developed at UK, and it is the world's largest open research papers platform. You can see its presence on Twitter and other social networking tools also. So it is an service with more than 1,000 data providers. Core aggregates open access journals and repositories, which include subjects and institutions also. The collected data available to everyone via Core search engine. It supports text and data mining of the aggregated content via API and data dumps. It provides a recommendation tool for and journal software. It also seamless access to the world's open access research papers. It aggregate all open access across relevant data sources worldwide. So right now, these many more than 50,000 journals are there. These many metadata and these many abstracts, these many full papers are there. You can use it, you can download it, you can print it, you can share it. This is a platform. The primary purpose of institutional repository is to collect and curate digital outputs, provide statistics, research excellence, and to open and disseminate research output to a worldwide audience. The Spark has published a paper on institutional repository, and for repository, specifically for institutional repository, interoperability is the vital point. And if we do not make our institutional repository interoperable, then it is very difficult to share the data. So institution does not necessarily need to implement searching and indexing functionality to satisfy this demand. It could simply maintain and expose the metadata, allowing other services to harvest and search the content. So core coalition of open access repositories, they have made a good statement for harvesting and aggregation. Each individual repository is of limited value for research, but the real power of open access lies in the possibility of connecting and trying together repositories. This is the real power, and that is why we need interoperability. So the content through connected repository is very important. And interoperability always allows us to exploit today's computational power so that we can aggregate data, mine, create new tools and services, generate new knowledge. So for harvesting the metadata, we need to follow this OAI-PMH. In core, they are following resource synchronizing, and they are downloading the metadata, extraction, harmonization, full text also. They also validate the metadata, they generate the thumbnails also, and then the DOI and linking to the other system. They check the deduplication also. They do the index and exposing also. So OAI-PMH supports representing metadata in multiple formats, but a minimum repositories must be able to return records with metadata expressed in Dublin core. If repositories want to satisfy the Spark guideline, they must provide a link to the content as a part of the exposed metadata. So the nature of the resource identifier is outside the scope of the OAI-PMH, and an element in metadata records to establish a linkage between the record and the identifier, that is URL or DOI. So in aggregation, so as I have told you, core is following the OAI-PMH harvesting. They are locating the full text. They focused on crawling also. And aggregation needs access to content, not just metadata. Metadata can be changing in time, and content, accessibility, availability, validity, and quality. So these are the core application. They have developed a portal also. They have developed a mobile application. They have developed a plugin also. Even you can download the plugin in your browser like Google Chrome or Firefox. Core API is also there, and repository analytics also you can download. Large index is there, and the project was started in February 2011. Records are there. So you can use core. We need to link the core search engine in our library and search the core engine to help library users. We need to inform our users about core, and we need to discover the content also in core search engine. Just I would like to share one example with you, that if you search for a newer search, say for example, few days back I was trying to search on newer topics like neural network or processing, hardly you will find articles in the platforms like NDLI or Shodhganga. If you search on this platform, you will find enough material because they are harvesting the metadata from the renowned institutional repositories like Harvard, Cornell, and other Cambridge University, and so on. As a repository manager, we need to install the core recommender and register for the repository dashboard. As a developer, we subscribe to our API. So repository managers use core. Repository managers can join through this link core.ac.uk/join. And when you become a core data provider, you can request an access to the core dashboard also, and you can install this recommender also. The link is also there. These are the some of the key objectives of core: classify paper according to their subject, development of API, publishing content in open access repositories, clustering content based on different semantic relation, developing citation network and analyzing relationship with semantic similarly of resources, developing formal methods for analyzing the impact of publication and authors, and analyzing intertopic relationship. Core is trying to provide a platform for the delivery of open access content aggregated from the multiple sources and to deliver a wide range of services. So, 2.5 million RDF triples and growing repository. This platform is very fast going. They are following museum ontology. So for content discovery, they are using this recommender discovery and repository dashboard. With its analytical tool, Core aims to contribute to the cultural change and promotion of open access, supporting a variety of stakeholders such as researchers, libraries, software developers, funders, and so on. So it is a faceted search. Find is what you can download, host the full text content. More than 22 million yearly unique visitors and world's largest aggregator of open access research papers. Core provides a free and seamless access to millions of research articles aggregated from thousands of open access data providers. More than 60 registered repositories are there, and 15 repositories are using it, including Cambridge University. So we need to give open access content also, because free online availability of research output is the main goal of open access. We have seen the Budapest open access initiatives, and despite right now the situation is that despite large amount of open access content already available, the content is not necessarily discoverable. This is the main issue, and it is already available but is difficult to find. So interoperability and OA impact, accessibility, discoverability, these are the important issues. So we need to move from open access metadata to open access content, and that's the way we can increase the visibility of open access content. This is about core API, data dumps and SDKs, literature-based discovery, fact-checking, research evaluation, scientometrics. They have a collaboration with IRIS, Artificial Intelligence, a startup of 20 people, and they are having collaboration with ProQuest also. And I'm happy to share with you that ProQuest will be going to create the dashboard for MS University, first time in India, and providing a key API. Core offers 3 levels of access: programmable access, transaction access, and analytical information access. This photograph I have taken from this dlib.org. Why is the problem? The problem is the interoperability, lower accessibility of the papers, text mining. We cannot monitor the growth. We are losing a strong argument for the adoption of open access, as we know that we do not have a mandatory open access policy in India. Although a few institutes like ICAR, ICMR, they have adopted the open access policy, but in UGC and as a government of India as a whole, it is not there. However, most of the platforms used in the repositories are using out of date technology. So it is very difficult to derive the exact statistics from the DCS also. Right now, I am not getting the statistics for my university from the Shodh Ganga platform. So we need to improve the technology also. And working group, they have working group to identify the core functionality for the next generation repositories. And these functionalities include more web-friendly architectures, embedding repositories into workflow of researcher, open peer review and quality assessment of the content, and better impact and usage measures. So if you talk about next generation repository, we need to position repository as a foundation for the distributed globally networked infrastructure for scholarly communication, and on top of which layers a value-added service will be deployed, thereby transforming the system, making it more research-centric, open to and supportive of innovation, while it's also collectively managed by the scholarly community. So these are the things we need to take care of in the next generation repositories. And these functionalities aim to transform repository into the foundation for distributed globally networked infrastructure for scholarly communication. And we need to add the added value services also. This is the screenshot of platform, and these many papers are there. You can search all these papers and you can download it full text. I have created the link and logo on my HML website. Core, you can see over here, core platform is there. And I have translated the promotional material in Gujarati also. And you can find here the Gujarati language. And these are the few of the ambassadors. So proportion of open access content that can be harvested is fairly low in comparison to metadata. And interoperability is the most important thing. And we need to observe these two principles. Open repositories provide open access to not just metadata, but the open access content too. And machine access. Open repositories should provide a free access to content to anybody, and mainly for researchers. Compliance validation tools are also needed. The rapid growth of open access content provides great opportunity for text mining. Aggregation need to aggregate content, not metadata. And aggregation should serve the need of different user groups, including researchers who need access to data, and Core aims to support them. It is global world's largest aggregator of open access papers, and large user base, is moving fast from research to a product, is always innovative and excellent value for money. Thank you. And my humble request to all the librarians that please use this platform and try to download maximum research papers from this platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mayank Trivedi, for this informative session. Well, rightly put by the professor, that institutional repository is now becoming an important platform for sharing of knowledge. He mentioned that it's not yet mandatory in India to preserve research work in institutional repository, but all esteemed institutions are adapting to the changing times and maintain their institutional repository, as it's important for NAAC accreditation, and it is a tangible indicator of research. It is beneficial to larger audience due to its accessibility. Mr. Trivedi also elaborated upon various institutional repositories across the world. He also talked about the visibility of database. We will be running a live question and answer round at the end of the webinar. So we have enabled Ask a Question feature as mentioned earlier. It is at the bottom of your screen in the auditorium. So if you have any questions, just pop them in there. The second panelist of the day is Dr. Shantanu Ganguly. He is a fellow at Knowledge Management Division in Delhi. He serves some of the leading organizations of the country like University of Delhi, Indian Institute of Management Lucknow, National Productivity Council, Voluntary Health Association of India, ILM, and TEDI. Dr. Ganguly's expertise include project management, knowledge management, devising communication strategy for organization, storytelling with Dave, that is data analytics and visualization experience, devising digital marketing strategy. Dr. Ganguly has conducted some of the leading capacity development and professional development program. He's also the advisor to many leading organizations like Math Systems Private, Indian Council of Medical Research, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. I welcome Dr. Shantanu Ganguly to speak on the topic of Research Intelligence Management System. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Ganguly.
Thank you, Professor Anjali Sherawat, for the brief introduction. I'm highly obliged for that. Thank you. First of all, let me thank Honorable Vice Chancellor of Ansal University, Dr. Ramanand Malviya ji, as well as my, once again, Professor Anjali and Mr. Abhishek, and my class old friend, Dr. Mayank, for an illustrious presentation on the the institutional repository and the concepts which he has laid out. In fact, I am highly obliged and little shaky that after Dr. Mayank Trivedi, whether I should make a presentation or not. Because the thing is that, well, he has already set the ball rolling, and he's coming from one of the topmost university of this country. Well, I come from a very a renowned research organization, basically working in the field of energy, environment, and sustainable development. So I have started doing a research, and let me tell you that I am a hardcore researcher every day, and I am a learner every day. So my new topic on which I am constantly researching nowadays, this is on research intelligence management system. Well, the topics which I am going to talk here, it has got 4 components. One of them is going to be on research and innovation 2.0. I would also, touch upon some of the components I'm sure many of you must be aware of regarding Orchid ID, the research data management, which I think are very illustratively, Mayank has already taken over, but some of the new things I would be talking here and my own experience. And there is another component I would be looking into, that quality research, because I am a guide to many of the researchers who are doing a lot of research. But when I look into some of the quality perspective of the research and look into the research ethics, basically, I find that there is a lot of gaps there. So probably I will, touch upon something. But please remember, when I'm talking about research words, research of the people, by the people, and research for the people. This is the mantra of any research dynamics in today's world. This is the only mantra. Now, in TERI, our vision is knowledge discovery. This is our structure. In fact, you can make out that this is my picture. I think I very proudly say that I am one of the fellow in my organization, and I am the my organization and my knowledge management division is one of the organization who have to meet the targets, which generates an enormous amount of revenue from different research work what we carried out in our library perspective. In fact, that library is a very a kind of a minuscule nowadays, but we do in a much more bigger scale, because we have to do a lot of bring in a lot of more projects. We have to bring in innovations in the projects. We have to increase the lot of success rates because there is a lot of competition in the market. We have to think out of the box, and we have to find out which are the new funding opportunities which are coming up. So these are very important aspects. So for us, every day is our business research. Every day. It is not a single day. Even on Saturdays and Sundays, we are working, and we are looking into the research perspective. Well, let me give you a brief account of TERI. I'm sure many of you must be aware. TERI started in 1974, And it is the only organization in this country we started as a documentation information center in the field of energy and environment. So you can imagine how much information documentation is very close to our heart. In 2010, we are the first institution in this country who implemented as a research-based knowledge management system in this country. And we work very closely with the project management system of TERI. Now, we have a lot of branches in all over India. Like we have, we have branches in New Delhi, Mumbai, Assam, and we have Bangalore. So all of them are connected with us, and we constantly look into those areas. Then one of the most important thing is that in today's context, as Mayank was also mentioning, I think we research professionals, when I'm calling we, I'm not talking about TERI here. I'm talking about all the 624 people who have logged in today for this particular webinar. Please try to understand what is sustainable development goals. And please remember, we need to address all these sustainable development goals. If TERI, as a researcher, I am as a researcher from your domain only, if I can do it, you can also do it. Only thing is that you have to get into the details of all these things. We address the sustainable development goals. Some of the major area we look into, like your environment, economy, sustainable livelihood. These are some of the major areas we are constantly rehearsing and doing the research into that. There are several areas we like, for example, a new concept I'm sure all of you must be aware of, which is called as a smart city. We are working with the different domain experts to find out how some of the smart city models can be implemented. What are the kind of data to be collected? Like Mayank mentioned about the amount of data which is getting generated from different sensors. We are doing a very close research in those areas, how the data could be collected from different avenues. So that's a very, very important thing. Energy use, the usage of energy. So how we have to reduce the carbon footprints and how we can, maximize the renewable energy perspective. Those are the areas we are extremely important for us. Well, I am finding a disturbance in somebody's talking on the system. Somebody is talking, I am finding it difficult to explain.
I think it's Abhishek.
Abhishek, can you please?
Mr. Abhishek, can you please? Mr. Abhishek, can you hear him? Yeah, so he's muted.
Okay, so most research intelligence management system, which we follow in the entire thing, is the pre-research, it is the research, and it is the post-research. If you are a part of any research organization or any research dimension, please remember there are three major categories. Pre-research. Exactly. There is a lot of disturbance. I cannot speak. Abhishek, can you please mute yourself? I can't speak. There is a data management framework. There is a risk management plan. Because each and every research work which we are doing, it has a lot of things into it. We have a lot of data collection analysis. We have a metadata generations, which already Mayank has taken over. There is a storage and access, and then the post. Once you have completed the research, what you are going to do the research. I'll show you what you are supposed to do with the research, because people are looking for an answer from you. And you are being one of the research-based organization. Every university, every institution in this country should try to address that. And that is where I bring in my research and innovation 2.0. I have taken a very interesting, this diagram from what I call it as from Science Direct. In fact, I was fortunate to, hear the CEO of Science Direct. I was I was listening to his lecture, and he was talking on 4 major areas. And these 4 major areas he was addressing to the entire research fraternity in this country, in this world. And we professionals have to play a very pragmatic and a pivotal role into it. The first and the foremost is it has to be source neutral. Today, you cannot tell a researcher that you are going to get resources from XYZ research databases. No, because in the market, there are more than that. So have you gone into those details? One of the important component is transparent. Extremely important to understand that. Interoperability, where there is a different kinds of mechanisms where you can do a lot of interoperability. And another most important content, it is not content based. Those things are gone. In fact, after listening to his entire this talk, there are 3 things, 3 critical factors I put in front of you. Content, yes, content is rich, content is king. The most important thing is context, the purpose. And for giving that purpose, who is important? Who is important? It is the user, it is the researcher. So empower your researcher. And the last but not the least is the technology. So that's a very important component. So what is most important in today's context is knowledge transfer. Because I work with different kind of clients throughout the world. I work working with the partners to bridge the gap between a fundamental research and a commercial applications. So we need to understand in today's context, it is from resource-based to knowledge-based. And that's where the Ansal University has come up with the topic, the changing landscape of the research. It is no more research-based, it is knowledge-based. And this word knowledge means a lot. Now, we need to understand as an academic institutions, and I have taken this from a detailed study which was taken up, long-term investment in excellence in scientific industry, in disciplines, industry will not do it anymore. They have given this to academic institutions and university. You do the research and pass it on to us. Efficient knowledge transfer with industry in a sustainable way, because they are looking for bridging the bridges. The responsible partnership they are looking for. Enormous need for training of knowledge transfer professionals, both in the university and the industry, and help to develop a new business model, which is called as a spin out, and support entrepreneurship, incubation, training or capacity building, education at different levels. We need to do that. This is the new role of the academic institutions. In fact, I was making a very big presentations at Amity University on the request. So quadruple helix innovation model is the current model. We need to understand this model. Please remember, we all professionals have need to understand this. It is the government and the public, it is the academic, it is the industry, at end of the day, it is the citizen. Whatever you are doing it is not meant for yourself. It is not meant for consumption. But please remember, whatever you are discovering, whatever you are creating, there is somebody to use it. So develop that, what is useful for others. So there is a very important concept. In fact, there was a very interesting paper. I would request all of you to please go through. It was by Pillar and Daniel. Like, what is the concept of open innovation? That's what he was, one of the component what he was talking about. Mayank, well, that was on open access, but it is beyond that. Allows to acquire, integrate, and process external information more efficiently and effectively. In fact, I was delivering a talk at CII on this. Creates a new forms of interacting and collaborating with external environment. It is the supplier, it is the customers, it is the universities, and requires working with the external parties, because not all talent and knowledge is there in your company. So you have to look out for those people. So what is most important is, please remember, there used to be a closed innovation. We have developed, we are going to utilize it. But please remember, that thing is gone. People have closed innovation. There is a shift towards open innovation. And from open innovation, they're getting into innovation network ecosystems, where you get into the connectivity and all. Now, there is a very interesting model I would like to share with all of you. I'm finding it very difficult to speak because somebody is speaking. Please, the controller, please mute the person. Please mute the person. I'm finding it very difficult to speak. When I'm talking,
Sir, all the microphones are muted, so I think it seems to be a technical glitch. We'll have to bear with it, sir. My apologies.
okay, thank you. So what is most important is there is a model developed by Henry Chesbrough in 2004, what is basically called as an open innovation. It is called an open funnel method. In fact, he has written several books, and out of which we're saying that there are several internal technology based, there are external technology based there. They will all get into in. But out of which the best one will go to the market. And once it goes to the market, then it will get an importance. So develop the product, develop the research, develop that incubation, develop that innovation, bring it that innovation disruption, which is going to have such kind of, which is going to address that. So that's a very important. So we need to have an academia and an industry. We need to shake hands with each other. It is extremely important in today, because if you want to have a competitive advantage, we need to have, even if you are bringing out products, you are bringing out markets, if you are bringing out any kind of intellectual property rights, you are going to do it for the market, for the people where you are going to create the thing. So this is very, very important for all of you. Now, I'm sure this particular concept is known to many of you, but still for some of the young research professionals, when I can see profile, that some of you must know what is basically
what is the intention?
what ID. It is basically a platform where you connect researchers to research, where the challenge is how the research activities fit for our career. And as a researcher, you want to ensure your work is discoverable and connected. Minimize the time to spend repetitive data. Eliminate name ambiguity, distinguishing you from other researchers and ensuring proper attribution. So most important thing, now this is, I'm showing you a snapshot of a former popular. Like for example, if you see the word Wang here, now this Wang has got number of initials. Now, how do you find which Wang you are talking about? How do you identify which Wang you are going to recommend for your research? So disambiguation is required. Author affiliation, that is ownership. Interoperability in scholarly communication. Avoid repetition of same work. And transparency in scientific activities. These are some of the important aspects of the academic community. Now, most important in people identification is the researchers. There is something called as ISNI, where you have a researcher as a researcher ID. You have a scope.
Dr. Ganguly?
Yes.
So sorry to interrupt. Can you please pause for 15-20 seconds, because we will be muting all the participants and unmuting and muting them again.
Okay.
So I think there is some disturbance from their side. So please pause for 15 or 20 seconds.
तो आपको ये नुकसान होगा, लेकिन उसके एक बहुत ही साधना आगे बात हो पाते, इतनी आसान क्रियाएं नहीं है जो कोई भी बच्चा इसको
अभिषेक कौन है जो उसको जरा बंद करो। Organizers who are requested to please put the call.
नहीं कर पा रही हूँ अपने आप को, अनम्यूट नहीं कर पा रही हूँ ना। अरे भाई मैं अनम्यूट नहीं कर पा रही हूँ, अनम्यूट तो करो मुझे। नहीं। Request all the participants to please put their microphones. Seems to be some technical glitch, so default setting may not be working for everyone. So I request all the participants to please. We will start again. So sorry for the interruptions, Dr. Ganguly. Dr. Ganguly, can you hear me? So please unmute your microphone, Dr. Ganguly. Request Abhishek to do it for you. डॉक्टर गांगुली को अनम्यूट करो। So please, you may now resume. Dr. Ganguly.
Shall I start?
Yes, sir, please. Thank you so much.
Okay, so this is an example of a research ID, because like, for example, just like Aadhaar card and all, nowadays you need to have a lot of IDs and all, because every researcher, they should have an ID, because then it helps them to get connected with one another. And it is an extremely important thing. And here exactly, we professionals have to play a very, very important role. You should tell how you should get connected and how you should register on an ORCID ID platform or a research ID platform. And there are several other platforms like this. Like, for example, this was developed in 1960 by Eugene Garfield. And this is a matter which is a Web of Science. And it has got 2.7 lakh identities in it. Scopus has got his own ID. So one can get, you know, I mean, can get their ID interested into that. So research paper in economics. So this is another area where basically one can get, you know, thing. And then your Google Scholar profile is also there, where you can also, you can create your own ID. Basically, you can, or you can help your researchers to create your ID. Then there is a Microsoft Academic Search is there, where also you can help the researchers to create their ID. So these IDs are very important because each and every ID basically identifies a particular researcher of a particular field. And what is the use of it? Because one researcher may be sitting in India, maybe in Ansal University. Let me take an example of Professor Anjali herself. She wants to do another research with somebody in the University of Aberdeen, or maybe in this University of London. So how she gets connected to that? With the help of an ID, what she creates. Where here you are creating a profile management of the researchers, and that's what a very, very important area for these areas. So these are some of the glimpses of that. Because there's a lot of disturbance, it has already discontinued my entire flow. So these are some of the things like very important. With one project was created by, this is an expert database which was created by Ministry of HRD, and each and every researcher in this country, they should get they should get themselves registered for this particular platform and all. And one of the most important thing is that once you get registered, you have a login ID and a password. You can do a filtration also. You yourself can find out that you are a researcher working, say, for example, in a sociology area or a psychology area, or maybe some scientific area you are working on, renewable energy or climate change or these areas. So who are the other researchers who are working on the same area? Probably you can come up with a collaborative project or so. So these are very, very important aspects where you should get registered yourself. So basically, what is Orchid ID? This is basically the website. It is a 16 number. It is a kind of a PAN number or Aadhaar number which you get. And nowadays, when you apply for any international projects, for any multilateral, bilateral organizations, because we are constantly doing it, where they always ask for our Orchid ID numbers, because it is like a LinkedIn profile. They find out what is your research base in that particular area. That's a very, very important. Yes. Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir, we can hear you. Please continue.
So one researcher may have, he can have a different kinds of a profile or identifiers, and that can have a connectivity with that. And this kind of a registration you can see an example of this, how the Orchid ID number comes to it, and it is very, very important. And I can show you, like, for example, Professor Ashutosh Sharma, who is currently the Secretary of Department of Science and Technology. So he has got these Orchid IDs, what are his papers, and each and his keywords also tells us what are his areas of strength. So it can immediately, because if you write Ashutosh Sharma, there must be several Ashutosh Sharma. But what I'm looking for is basically Ashutosh Sharma, who is the Secretary DST. So that kind of an Orchid ID I'm talking about. So that it's a very, very important aspect. So what it talks about is you have to collect, you have to enter once. You have to create your Orchid ID. You have to display it, get connected with the people who are onto different organizations and institutions, and then you can do a synchronizations of that. So this is basically a kind of a platform where you have a discoverability and interoperability, where basically the publisher, the employer, and the funder, they get connected with a researcher. Please remember, in any kind of research work, what you are doing in a research-based organization, it is the publisher, it is the employer, it is the funder. These three people are very, very important. And this is how a publisher also finds you and approaches you, writing an article or writing a book or writing a journal. They also look for your, ID numbers also. Like, for example, you can have, they specifically, they mention some of the leading peer-reviewed journals. They provide all these kinds of details, and you need to have all these things, because you don't need to send your you have a, entire, you don't need to send your entire profile. They can easily find out ID details and all. So ORCIDs protects your unique scholarly identity. It creating an ORCID identifier takes 30 seconds. ORCID ID is getting big fast. ORCID supports 30 to 37 types of works, from articles even to the dance performance. So it is irrespective of any of the area. ORCID is blue for all your research services. It is journals, funders and institutions. They are moving into the ORCID ID, and everyone has an ORCID ID identifier. So that's what basically they get a better output out of it. So another aspect of my research intelligence management system, what I basically called is called as research data management system, where I think he has already talked about much on these areas. So I don't need to tell you more about it. But please remember, in a research-based organization, there was a time when people used to collect data in copies. And today, we have the platforms available with us for compilation and collation of data. So this is from where, and these data has already been digitized, has already been entered into the database, and it is available there. There is a very interesting model. In fact, we conducted a webinar last week, which is with Harvard University. It was on FAIR data. Basically, it talks about a FAIR model where it is findable, accessible, reusable, and interoperable. And it is very simple because you can find a umpty number of data sets which are already available. They are accessible for you with complete citations, and you can store it also for yourself. You can reuse it for different purpose, and you also need to have an interoperability. You can easily convert it into CSV files, or it could be in the Excel file also. So the actual methodology is, there is a business. You need to understand, when we do a particular research, there is a business issue understanding. There is a business objective. There is a research when we are doing for a particular project. We write the scope of work. We do a lot of deliverables. We do a lot of analysis. Then we get into the initial data collections, and this data collection, it could be a primary data, it could be secondary data. Data preparations, exploratory analysis, then the validation and the visualization and presentations. And please remember, let me tell you, the friends in this webinar, that on each of these, these 6 verticals which I'm mentioning here, the V library information science professionals have to play a very, very important role. Because only thing is that you need to have a research acumen. That's the only thing. And you can do it. And there are umpty number of research projects are available, but they are looking for people who can take up those projects. But only thing is that you have to follow certain work process, which are extremely important. Well, quickly, I'll go through some of the data sets. DataVerse is one of the major model which Harvard has talked about, where you can see there is a data repository where you can put all the data, and you can start having it based on researchers' data. You can have organization data, you can have institution, you can have labs, teaching courses and team projects, and a lot of hands-on practice are there. Even from their articles also, if you look at, like for example, on COVID-19 data, if you want, they have developed a entire on the database, DataVerse, whatever the research which is taking place or which has taken place in the past, all the data, they have created the DataVerse platform. They have created everything there. So the most important in the life cycle of a research data management is the publish and share, archive and preserve, and then reuse. So this is a very, very important area. So data sharing, there are several models. I'm not, campaigning about DataVerse, but there are several, platforms are there as far as research data management is concerned. Like Harvard database is one of them, which is very popular nowadays. Some of the leading universities of this country, in the globally, it has taken. In India, it is only ICRISAT is using it. Zenodo, ICPSR, Gene Expression Omnibus, digital archaeological and dry digital library. These are some of the very big data repositories which are there, and I'm sure all of you should go through it, each one of them. Do your SWOT analysis of your own organization and see which particular data repositories is good for your organization's data meeting. So now I'll come to the research ethics first. So let me tell you that I told you that we do a large number of projects for the multilateral and bilateral organizations. In one of the projects, which I did it for, it was for a research council for UK government. It was a huge project, and I feel very proud that I compete with large number of researchers and I got the project myself. Because of only one reason. Because we are the people, we know how to do a review of literatures. But let me tell you, when I was doing this particular project, the entire concept which was there in my mind, that how to do a review of literature, was completely revamped. It is not the kind of review of literature what we look for. It is completely different. And in this particular model, what we have looked into, it was a WEF nexus, it is called it. Water, energy, food nexus. Now, remember, we tried to look into only those articles. In fact, we had to find out 100 articles out of 1 million articles. And there was a platform which was used. I don't know how many of you have heard about. It is called Pool Party. And we use that Pool Party platform to get into the review of literatures. And that was a mind-blowing for us. Because why we did it? Because funding organization had a requirement. They want to see the impact on the society. They want to measure the efficacy. They want to look into the research relevancy. These are the very, very important components into it. So when I'm talking about a research activity, like for example, a TERI-based organization, there are 4 major components where research activities have a direct, linking. Research, engagement, teaching, and service. Out of which, one of the major area is your engagement. How do you engage your researchers, your research fraternity? How do you interpret your policymakers? How do you interpret to your stakeholders? How do you integrate the output with the policymakers, with the society at large? How do you actively position the entire research output? How a decision-making process takes place? How a participatory research takes place? All these formats were looked into in great details. And that is where the, we had our strength, and we work very closely on this. So research ethics is a very important thing. I'll quickly go through it, not taking much time, because we do a large number of research for different organizations and institutions all over the world. Basically for the government, I have got large number of projects with the government, multilateral and the bilateral organizations. So we have to follow the research ethics, because unless and until you follow a research ethics, you cannot survive in the market. Let me tell you very bluntly on this. Let me give you a very interesting example, a case study I came across. It is just a snapshot of the case study. In 1796, Edward Jenner, an English doctor, injected an 80-year-old boy, James Phipps, with a cowpox which made people ill but wasn't fatal. He later injected James with smallpox, a deadly human disease, to demonstrate that the original injection of cowpox had protected him from the smallpox. Do you think that experiment would allow today? If why or why not? So probably I'm leaving an answer to all of you with this. So ensuring your research is ethical, because you conduct a lot of, experiment, a lot of survey, a lot of observational study you do. You do carry out a lot of research where your ethics is required, because you bring out a lot of people into your on board, exploring the questions which do not know the answers. So that's why you create a hypothesis onto it. And then there is a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of risk is involved. Let me tell you, I have been associated with several research projects of my organizations, and I have faced all of them. All of them I have faced. So it has given me an enormous experience today to become a hardcore researcher in several fields today. So all research carried out in the universities, organization, and industry will have through a ethical approval process. Constitution of a research ethics committee, it's very mandatory. In fact, we had a very strong, it is a part of our quality commitment. And very important ethical review committee has to look into the entire research process also. So evaluation is a very, very important area, because evaluating the research and recording the lessons learned enables researchers to learn from shared experience and avoid repeating the harmful mistakes, because you cannot reinvent the wheel every time. So what we have done at the end of the evaluation process, that we have started capturing the lessons learned, because that's a very important area for us. Because unless and until you record the lessons learned, probably it will help you to, not to. So again, I'm getting a disturbance. Question you must ask, respect for individuals. I'm quickly completing it, because I'm finding it very difficult to, present this. Research impact is a very important, and confidentiality and anonymity of information is very important. You have to be very fair. How will you choose your participants? Unethical to choose your participant from a social group. So it has to be a balanced, when you do a kind of a sampling, it has to be a very balanced sampling. And what is most good quality research? Like, I am associated with many of the MPhil and PhD students. Like, I find you need to do a lot of systematic reviews. You have to have well-designed randomized controlled trials, well-designed trials without randomization, well-designed non-experimental studies, and opinion of the respected authorities is very important when you do a clinical-based research and all. So reliability, validity, internal validity, external validity, and replicability. These are some of the criteria for assessing the quality and all. So some of these, tools I have marked here. So probably you people can also look into it, like To-Do-List, EndNote, EduGigs Clubs, Zotero. I'm sure many of you are aware of it. And these kinds of, so instead of, getting into huge collections of, books, journals, resources you have, it is very much important. But what is most important today is basically you need to create a repository, and out of which Mayank has already talked about, start with the data repository also. So a major role of the librarian is to understand the information needs of the researchers. That is my takeaway for all of you. So thank you very much. I'll end my note with every mountain top is within reach if you just keep climbing. This is by Barry Finlay. Thank you very much for my presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Ganguly, for such an informative and knowledgeable session. Sir started with the mantra for research dynamics. Certainly, research intelligence provides the answers to the most pressing challenges researchers face, with innovative solutions that improves an institution's and individuals' ability to establish, execute, and evaluate research strategy and performance. He also elaborated upon ORCID ID, research profiles, and its importance. His presentation indeed encouraged the information system community to consider and debate the ethical values that should inform the research and publication that we undertake. He rightly mentioned it is no more research-based, but knowledge-based. I now leave the floor open for any kind of queries. So if you have any questions, please write that in the question and answer box. We will be taking all the questions, relevant questions, one by one. And I also want to share an important information with you. On your screen, you can see a link. So I request all the participants to fill up the feedback form. You can see the link on your screen. The link can also be found in the chat box and is also being shared on the screen. It is mandatory for all the participants to fill up the feedback form, following which they will get their certificates. So it is a mandatory exercise for all of you. Please fill up the feedback form to get your certificates. Simultaneously, we will be taking up the questions. Sir, let me congratulate both the speakers, both the panelists for today, because our chat box is full of appreciation for the informative session done by both of you.
Thank you.
Well, I was little upset because there was a lot of disturbance and thing happened. It was really a bad thing for me because it disturbs my entire flow of my thought process, and that has broken down into several parts. I don't know whether I could make any justice or not. Because it is
Sir,
a
our
very
sincere apologies, but then it was some technical glitch because
No,
our backend team was also, yeah.
Yeah.
So, sir, let me just, as I was mentioning that we have a lot of congratulations messages in the question answer box as well. So,
I would
so
be
there are a lot of
happy to take up-
participants. So there are a lot of
I would be
participants
happy-
who are asking
Professor
for your
Anjali, I would
PPTs.
be happy to take any questions. I don't need any congratulations. I need some criticisms. I love to have
Sure, sir,
criticism
sure,
so
sure.
that I can improve
Sure.
on my thought
Sure,
process.
sir. Sure, sir. So
don't
there are
need-
participants who are asking for the PPTs. Would they be provided with the PPTs presented by the panelists?
Yes, we will provide you the PPTs. But only thing is that they should not come for only certificate. They should understand the subject first.
Yes.
And Professor
Sure.
Professor Mayank Trivedi has given a elaborative thing. Well, I could do a little justice, a very minuscule justice on the research intelligence management system. So probably they should understand the gravity of the subject rather than taking a certificate for a certificate.
So this particular question by Professor,
Presentation.
I'm so sorry.
Professor Shantanu, it was wonderful presentation, and I have learned many things.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
So this question is directed to Professor Trivedi, Dr. Trivedi. So it's a question by Professor Priti Gangadhar Patil. She is asking if core app downloading essential, or is it searching through, or if it's possible to search for core downloading through a direct link also.
It is not essential. You can directly search core.ac.uk. This is the through which you can search. It is not needed to download the application. For your mobile, you need to download the app.
So then there is a question from Cecilia Temei. She's not written where is she from, but her question, what counts as good quality? Little more explanation. So I think this question is directed towards Dr. Shantanu Ganguly. She hasn't really elaborated the question. So it's difficult for me to understand. I hope the panelist would be able to do justice to the question and answer her question.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. Professor Trivedi, you can.
Yeah. Please repeat.
Yes, sir, please.
Yeah. Can you repeat the question?
Sir, I'll have to look for it again because there are too many questions popping up and then.
Okay.
So can we take up some other question meanwhile, because I've lost that question. So
See, I can see, Professor Anjali, there was a question came from somebody. Somebody was asking
sir.
regarding that review of literature using Pool Party. Now, Pool Party is, let me tell them that Pool Party is basically a paid platform, and it has got, you need to take a training using the Pool Party platform, because Pool Party is not a very easy platform to use. It is a not normal platform to use. So for that, what you need to do, like for example, if I'm doing the mechanisms, what we have done is basically like, for example, when we are doing a research in the field of water, energy, food nexus. So what we do, we develop a semantic ontology on water, we develop on energy, and as well as on food. The words comes out from there, and some of the relevant words, when they come out, we try to put it into the pool party platforms, and then we start scheming out. And this is not a one-time process, because because if you are, suppose you are doing for 100 million articles, you have given some general keywords, you will get from 100 million, you will come down to 50,000. So from 50,000, you have to come down to, again, you have to dig out some more keywords which are more relevancy, because it is based on a relevancy research. So more you do the relevancy research and more micro terms you bring in where the correlations are there, then only you can use those terms for doing the review of literature. So Pool Party is a very, very powerful platform for doing systematic review of literature. It is not normal review of literature. It is called systematic review of literature. If you go to the Pool Party website, you will come to know exactly how Pool Party works on it.
Thank you, sir. So there is a question from Rakesh Mohindra. He's asking if there is any special SOP in case of libraries which serve public.
SOPs which are?
In case of libraries which serve public.
Which serve public?
Yes, sir.
I have not followed the question. I think public library is there. What is the SOPs? Public libraries.
Yeah.
What he's trying to say.
Yeah.
This question is very ambiguous.
Yes, sir. So almost every question is ambiguous. And I request all the participants do not write any comments in the question and answer section. It gets very confusing for the moderator to find out the relevant questions. So, sir, I'm able to locate that question which I was asking earlier. What count as good quality?
Okay.
Miss Cecilia is asking for more explanation.
Okay, good quality. I think Professor Tiwari, would you like to say something, Mayank?
Professor Ganguly.
Okay. See, when I'm talking about a good quality research, the first and the foremost thing, whenever you are taking a particular project on a good quality research, even if you in your MPhil thesis, or I don't know whether you are a PhD students and all, see, you need to do for the first and the foremost thing that you have to do very strong review of literature you have to carry out. And you have to do a very deep research on that. Then you have to find out those gaps. What are those gaps? It is not Control V, Control C. Control V, Control C is not going to serve the purpose. Then you have to come up, when you identify your gaps, then you have to devise your objectives. What are the things you want to achieve? Then you have an hypothesis. You have to develop things that if such things happen, then how will you do that? And then and if you are doing a quality research, and if you are unable to get any data, please, for God's sake, don't hide that data from anyone. In your limitations, very clearly mention that I didn't get data. Don't try to manipulate any data, because in real research work, what I'm talking about from my own research work, things doesn't happen like that. In fact, all my library information science professionals here who are researching, it is my humble request that please, whenever you are doing a research, please be careful and please be sincere to your research. You have to follow certain methodology for carrying out a quality research and all. Because carrying out a quality research, it is a methodical process. It is an organized process. In fact, I take different sessions in Delhi University and other areas where how to do an organized research. There is an entire process is involved, and you need to carry out all this process. You can't just skip out the process and all. So that's where you need to have a organized research. I'm using the word in inverted quotes, organized research. That's which gives you a good quality output and all. Well, I think there is one student has asked Professor Anjali that from open source to open science, and she's a PhD student. Now, if you want to understand something about open science, you can get in touch with me, because open science is a very, very big area. And I would request you to please go through a site of Professor Klaus Tochterman, who is the director of National Library of Economics in Berlin. In fact, he's a very close friend of mine, who came out with a concept called Open Science 2.0. And it will show you that what exactly open science means in today's context.
So then Ms. Arushi Kataria, she's asking if any ideology or research that you want to share regarding Shantanu sir's idea about smart cities. So maybe this question is directed to Dr. Trivedi. So she's wanting your ideas on smart cities.
Smart cities. As per my belief, and I have seen the website of the smart cities, and they have identified almost more than 100 smart cities across the India. But I personally believe that unless our libraries are not smart, smart cities cannot be created.
So then we have another question.
Professor Anjali, can I reflect on this question? On this?
Yes, please, sir. So I was about to say that if you're wanting to elaborate further, yes.
Yeah. So taking a cue what Professor Mayank mentioned, see, to me, I have categorized SMART. In fact, I have created it in the form of an acronym. The word SMART spelling is what? S-M-A-R-T. S stands for sustainable. A stands for achievable. R stands for reliable, and T stands for transformational, and M stands for measurable. And if you combine all these 5 attributes or parameters, your SMART concept comes to life. And when we talk about smart city, it is not only the smart library, as Dr. Mayank mentioned. Yes, we have smart libraries has to play a role, but there is one of the major component is you need to understand all the 17 sustainable development goals that has been defined as by the United Nations in 2015. How you are going to address all the 2015 all those sustainable development goals in a smarter way.
Ganguly.
Please, Mayank, please.
As you mentioned about the SDGs, and IFLA has mentioned on its website that apart from goal number 4, that is quality education, libraries can contribute in all the 17 goals.
Yes.
And if you go to the website of Digital India, one of the pillar is information accessible to all.
Yes.
So very, very important.
Very right. Very right. Thank you, Mayank, for complimenting it. Thank you, Mayank.
Thank you.
So then we have the next question. Ms. Kataria is wanting to know that how can an engineering student make an Orchid ID to become a researcher?
Well, for Orchid ID registrations, if you go to the Orchid ID website, it will ask you your entire credential details. So you can have any kind of your Gmail account. Preferably you keep your Gmail account. Don't keep any institutional account because they would be sending you a lot of alerts and other things which are very important, or somebody wants to get connected. So it is basically it is better to have your own personal account, and then you have to fill up the entire profile. So basically, as a profile management, it is a platform for the profile management. And if you are an engineering student, then you need to understand which are the area, not only Orchid ID, but there are several IDs. Which are those IDs where you should get yourself registered, so that you have a interlinking connectivity. I don't know on which engineering sector you are working. Suppose you are working in the field of automobile sector. So probably you want to get on an automobile sector. You want to get connected to another automobile sector with somebody in some organization or some universities who is doing a similar kind of a research work. And it helps a lot. It brings in the actual credibility of a hardcore researcher in the country.
So the next question which we are taking now is by Dr. Anish Mohammed. He has a question. He's asking that how can we create new emerging techniques for patrons?
New emerging techniques for?
Patrons.
Emerging techniques for patrons?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, Anjali, I have not followed the question.
Again, an ambiguous question, sir. Trivedi, sir, if you want to share your views on it, if you understood the question, because it's again an ambiguous question.
I understood. Patrons means users.
Yes, sir. Patrons means users.
New techniques means how can we attract the users to the library? He wants to ask like this?
Sir, I request Mohammed to please, Dr. Mohammed to please elaborate the question. Maybe we can take up some other question. So, sir, there is another question by Miss Ranjan. So this question is directed to Professor Ganguly. She's asking, how can we assure that we are researching in the right way?
Well, that's a classical question. So I don't have a ready-made answer for this, that you are in the right way and all. But one thing I would say, I think that's a very fundamental question. Also, we also do the same thing since we do a lot of client projects. Now, it all depends on if you have conducted a pilot. Because what we generally do, see, you come up with when you do a research, you come up with something called with your speculation. And when you have a speculation, you try to do it with certain aim. And you are trying to collect some data from the field or so. Let me take an example of, like, when I was working on a particular a research project on Bimaru states. The Bimaru stands for Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, and UP, as far as the Professor Ashish Bose model is concerned. So in the Bimaru states, if I'm collecting a data, so what I did, I had one particular questionnaire which was listed, which was meant as a universal questionnaire for all the Bimaru states. But when I did the pilot, I found I am not getting the right data, because every state has its own mandate and every state has its own perspective to deliver. So automatically what happened, it was landed into some of the questions, not the entire question, but some of the questions were twisted, which were meant for the other states. So that kind of pilot always helps to to give you a directions whether you are into the right direction or not. I mean, and another component is that you should be always, if you are a PhD student or so, like when I have my PhD students or different students, you should be always in touch with your guide or with your peer group. You should consult. Please don't feel ashamed. Please don't feel ashamed if you ask something from your counterparts or something from your fellow members or something, because more you ask, because research doesn't mean research, but research means research, bringing out a new concept which doesn't exist in the market.
Definitely a very important piece of advice given by Dr. Ganguly. I'm sorry, Dr. Trivedi, you were saying something.
Yeah. Can online survey method solve this problem by customizing the question?
Yes, Mayank, it can. In fact, let me tell you that we use, I'm giving you, because I do a research project, which is mostly on data innovation. So in fact, I am not making any presentation on data innovation because that's a huge area I do. Now, data intelligence and data innovations, where I used a model called social corps. Now, using a social corps model, where you collect the data from the primary data from the field itself. And from there, you can make changes in the questionnaire in the online format itself. For example, let me give you, I was doing a research on the sociological research. Now, in the sociological research, where you meet a lot of, rural women. Now, when you ask, suppose you go with a questionnaire, say a 2-page questionnaire or a single-page questionnaire, you ask your rural woman to, to fill it up, they will never fill it up. In fact, they will never come in front of you because they are having a ghungat of this much size, even in the Haryanas and on those places. So they will not come in front of you. So in that case, what you do? So this model which I use on the social corps, where you capture the data through audiovisual mechanisms, and that helps you, because that's a process basically we follow, which converts the data from the audiovisual mechanisms to the data incorporation. The data gets incorporated, and that entire data gets stored as a repository in my server also. So that kind of a mechanism we generally use in many cases.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, as you were just now mentioning about the rural woman not being able to answer the questions, so relating to that, not really relating to the question, but then here a student has asked, Rajbir Singh, he's wanting to know that how, as librarians, he can help students in the rural areas in this times of COVID-19.
You people, I think we librarians can do immense work in the rural areas. One of the major area today, in fact, I myself is working in this COVID-19 pandemic area as a sociologist. If I'm working very closely with the social scientists today, I am looking into one of the major research areas today is what is called as reverse migration. You need to understand what is the concept of reverse migration. The people, the labor who has gone back, and some of the people are finding it difficult to come back. Look out how you are going to look into their sustainability, how you are going to address their sustainable livelihood. Those are the areas need to be addressed. And let me tell you, please remember, library information science is not sitting in 4 walls and doing work. No, it is beyond what you people see. Only thing is that you have an open mind and go beyond the level. Then only you can do it. It cannot be done in 4 walls.
Add one point.
Yes, Dr. Trivedi. Yes, yes.
Professor Ganguly, you rightly mentioned about the role of the librarian. We need to redefine the role of the librarian, as our Honorable Prime Minister has mentioned about the Atmanirbhar Bharat. So how can we make India Atmanirbhar? Because the Indian economy lies with the agriculture. Most of the people are dependent on the agriculture. Is depending on the rains. So librarian can help the farmers, can give many types of duties, many types of services during this COVID period also. Just this one compliment. Thank you, Professor Ganguly.
Just an example I want to highlight here, Professor Anjali and Professor Mayank.
Yes.
We like, for example, reverse migrations, if you can, for an employment or a livelihood, can you think of, giving them something on agriculture sector? Something related to organic farming. We are doing a large, in fact, ministry has declared a large number of projects where you can also look into some of the Ayurveda, some of the Unani things, which people are trying to look into. And you can as a professional. I'm not calling it as a library professional. I look people as a research professional. Every individual as a research professional, they should come out with concrete solutions
Yes.
which can address and create an impact for the people at large. That's what basically important is.
So we will be taking up last question for the day as it's almost time. So Mr. Rakesh Mohindra, he's saying that there are a lot of resources which are not in electronically accessible. So I think he's wanting to say that a lot of resources or which are not available on the digital platform. So how does he access that? Like how do we all researchers access that?
Library जाओ और research करो.
Digitization is only.
I'll give a very interesting example in this. You know, when I was doing my PhD, and you know, I submitted. I don't feel regret to say that 3 times I have submitted my synopsis is got rejected. I don't feel I don't feel ashamed of it. I feel proud because my guide has told me how to do a research actually. The first time when I was presenting my synopsis in the front of my, you know, the research committee, around 12 members were there in the university. The first thing my research, the director research asked me, सारा गूगल करके आ गए क्या? डेटाबेस क्रिएट करके आ गए? तो मैंने बोला क्यों सर? कहता तुम्हारा जो फर्स्ट पेपर है वो 1978 का पेपर है जो डिजिटाइज हुआ है. But do you know that in this same area somebody has done a work in 1852 जो कि एक जर्नल का वॉल्यूम 1 इशू 1 में है. I am not rejecting your synopsis, but I want to see that you have incorporated in your thesis. He told me the volume number, he told me the issue number, he told me the page number also. And when I went back in Delhi University, धूल छाका, सारे धूल में पड़े हुए थे सारे जर्नल्स, वहां से जर्नल्स का पेपर को निकाला, 1 page document, it was 1 page. And in 1852, volume 1 issue 1 में सचमुच का वो आर्टिकल था. And I had to refer in my thesis. I don't feel ashamed in saying that. So that is, not everything is, you know, it's on a makeshift arrangement that you will get in a platter. No, research is not like that. Come and work with me in my field. I'll show you how much is digital and how much is non-digital. I'm a hardcore researcher.
It looks like we have covered up all the relevant questions, sir. So I hope it was a pleasant and fruitful experience for all of you in attending this webinar. On behalf of Dr. R.N. Malviya, Chief Librarian, Mr. Sandeep Bishnoi, IT Head, Students, Staff and Management of Ansal University, I, Dr. Anjali Sherawat, extend a hearty vote of thanks to the speakers for gracing their important work and sharing their findings and opinions today. Thank you, Dr. Ganguly. Thank you, Dr. Trivedi. Thank you all for being patient listeners and for attending this webinar in these trying times. I hope you've done the needful. You have filled up the form to get your certificate.
Thank you very much, Professor Anjali, for coordinating this entire event. Thank you, Mayank.
It was my pleasure.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ganguly. Thank you very much, Dr. Mayank. Thank you very much.
Thanks a ton. Thanks a ton for meeting everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Professor Anjali, thank you, Professor Ganguly.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Malviya. Bye bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Mayank.